Rogers. I grew up in Fort Sumner, New Mexico. You've probably never heard of that, but you've probably heard of Billy the Kid. And it also is home of where the Navajo Indians were so terribly treated. And in Fort Sumner now, they have a place called Bosco Redondo that honors the Indians. It's a beautiful place, and if y'all ever in that area, go see it. It's worth it. I decided, well, I didn't decide, my mom and dad helped me decide to go to Abilene Christian. I had a scholarship there that was called Working in the Cafeteria 40 hours a week. Took me 5 years to get through, but I met the love of my life, my honey, my darling. She's put up with me for 61 years now, and I appreciate the class this morning. The older you get, the better it gets. Your love grows, and some things because of your youth, I'm not considered very young. If I were 38, maybe so, but 83 is another story. I spent 40 years teaching. We taught on the Navajo Reservation for 2 years after we had been married, and that was quite a challenge. I called Vernon, I said, Yate Belagana this morning, and he looked at me like I was calling him a dirty word or something. Maybe not a dirty word, Vernon, but anyway, that means hello, white man. And from there we went to Gunnison, Colorado. We always wanted to go to Colorado. We found out what 56 degrees below zero is. That was not chill factor either. And anyway, we raised our kids in Gunnison, and after retiring there, as Sue taught, and we decided to go to South Texas, and her parents were ailing, and we went to a place called Beeville. Beeville was an interesting place, and finally we got in George West, and we finished out our retirement years there. Then we wondered, what is the Lord calling us to? And would you believe it was Cheney, Washington, so to speak. Anyway, we came to a worship service here, and I got to tell you, I fell in love with this congregation instantly. And we love the congregation here, and it's just been a wonderful trip. Would you pray with me, please? Father God, be with me, be with all of us as we present parts of your word. May this be a lesson that will help people, and may it be a lesson that will honor you. The topic, in Jesus' name I pray, amen. The topic is not a topic probably that would be very popular right now. The question of self-defense, and are Christians scripturally authorized to defend themselves using lethal force? And I just want to look at some concepts. Some of this I hope you'll give me some grace on, but it is let me make sure this is on. There it went, okay. And I came up with a topic, bullies. Now bullies, well, I want to define them, but bullies can come in all shapes, forms, sizes, and I guess descriptions. And I'd like to kind of define what Webster said about bullies. Excuse me, please. The definition of bullies is: bullying includes a wide variety of behaviors, but all involve a person or a group repeatedly trying to harm someone who is weaker, this is usually, or more vulnerable. It can involve direct attacks such as hitting, threatening or intimidating, maliciously teasing or taunting, name-calling, making sexual remarks, and stealing or damaging belongings. Or more subtle, am I saying it? Subtle? Does that sound better? My New Mexico accent's kicked in. Indirect attacks such as spreading rumors or encouraging others to reject or to exclude someone. How common is bullying? Now, as teaching, it was common. Almost 30% of teens, and this is statistics as of yesterday, 30% of teens in the United States, or over 5 million, are estimated to be involved in school bullying as either a bully, a target of teen bullying, or both. In a recent national survey of students grades 6 through 10, 13% reported bullying others, 11% reported being the target of school bullies, and another 6% said they bullied others and were bullied themselves. Limited available data suggests that the teen bullying is much more common among younger teens than older teens. As teens grow older, they are likely to bully others, to be targets of bullies, and to be targets of bullies. Bullying occurs more frequently among boys than girls. Teenage boys are much more likely to bully others and to be the targets of bullies. While both boys and girls say others bully them and make fun of the way they look or talk, boys are more likely to report being hit, slapped, or pushed. Teenage girls are more often the target of rumors of sexual comments. While teenage boys target both boys and girls, teenage girls most often bully other girls, using more subtle, I don't know why that word's jumping out at me, and indirect forms of aggression than boys. For example, instead of physical harming others, they are more likely to spread among gossip or encourage others to reject or exclude another girl. Now this is just general. I think the worst fight, I was a senior in high school, was between two girls, and they were fighting over boy. I'm glad it wasn't me. I won't go there. One girl this was in the lunchroom, one girl reached across and grabbed the girl's, you call this a pierced earring, right? And ripped it out. And then it got dirty. The other girl jumped across the table and bit part of her cheek out. And that's as far as I'll go with it. But girls can get vicious too, but most of the time. Now this is really kind of what I want to focus on, cyberbullying statistics. I'd never heard of this growing up, and most of you, anyway, it's really something. Adolescent girls are more likely found to be the victims of cyberbullying attacks. About 30% of our girls in comparison to 16% of the boys. About 50% of teens and young adults from ages 14 to 24 have reported that they have experienced some form of digitally abused behavior. Other teens are more likely to experience this type of bullying. About 45% of teens witness rude and mean behavior being said back and forth to one another on the social networking websites like Facebook, MySpace, and there are just so many more today. After receiving these types of cyberbullying attacks, girls are more likely to feel frustrated by the verbal attack, while boys are more likely to report feeling scared from the cyberbullying. Cyberbullying statistics report that victims of cyberbullying are likely to have lower self-esteem than the non-victims of cyberbullying. And a lot of you may wonder, what in the world is he talking about kids? I don't have any. I'd like to ask you, how many of you have grandkids that you can help with this? In the U.S., roughly 1 in 5 children have been cyberbullied. And with 90% of the teens connected to the internet, and I think it's probably more now, 85% use social media. Cyberbullying as an imminent threat. On this National Stop Cyberbullying Day, we hope parents will talk with their children about the exceptions of their behavior online and the expectations when it comes cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is a virtual form of bullying. The principles of traditional bullying remain. Someone reportedly picks on, harasses, intimidates, threatens, or humiliates a particular person with the intent to harm. But unlike old school bullying, cyberbullying attacks can be launched any time of the day or I just pushed this. Let me see if I can get it to go back. After receiving these types of cyberbullying attacks, girls are more likely to feel frustrated by the verbal attack, while boys are more likely to report feeling scared from the cyberbullying. Cyberbullying statistics also report that victims of cyberbullying are more likely to have a lower self-esteem than the non-victim of cyberbullying. In the U.S., roughly 1 in 5 children has been cyberbullied, with 95% of the teens connected to the internet and 85% using social media. Cyberbullying is an imminent threat. On the National Stop Cyberbullying Day, parents hope and will talk with their children about expectations of their behavior online and expectations when it comes to cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is a virtual form of bullying. The principles of traditional bullying remain. Someone repeatedly picks on, harasses, intimidates, threatens, or humiliates a particular person with the intent of harm. But unlike the old school bullying, cyberbullying attacks can be launched any time of day. The hard to defend against have the potential to draw hundreds, if not thousands, of other people into the attack. No one is there to intervene, and often the attacks are anonymous. Now, with AI, artificial intelligence, a victim can be made to appear participating in any kind of pornography or pornographic activity. Last Monday, Melania Trump is trying to help pass a bill. We'll talk about it more later. But it was quite something. She met with Ted Cruz and some other politicians trying to pass this bill. These are 3 young ladies that gave examples of how they were cyberbullied. When you hear their stories, it was terrible. Someone could take their head, so to speak, and with cyberbullying attach it to any kind of body, and they can make that body do anything they want. And these girls talked about how some of them, the thing with them lasted at least 2 years. And they could not go online and bring those pictures down. There was a young father there that his son was bullied too, and his son took his life. It was just so tragic. I'm going backwards. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. I'm not used to buttons. I'll get used. Okay, this is what Melania Trump was saying. This toxic environment can be severely damaging. We must prioritize their well-being, talking about teenagers and older adults, by equipping them with the support and tools necessary to navigate this hostile digital landscape. She said during a roundtable discussion about the new bill, Take It Down Act of the U.S. Capitol last Monday. There was one group of the politicians that were all for it, and one group that's kind of not wanting to go with it. But pray for it. I'm not going to go there. An adage, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me, doesn't apply in today's world of words. They do hurt. And when it comes to social media, they're a sharp weapon. Experts say cyberbullying can be worse and more extreme than in-person personal bullying because then there is no break from it to the home and to the school. Bullies are often far more aggressive when they are hiding behind a scene or some kind of an anonymous act. A study published in the Science Daily found cyberbullying makes young people twice as likely to self-harm and attempt suicide. Cyberbullying is difficult for parents and grandparents to detect because it is hard to see everything communicated with our children via social media and their online interaction, but experts have agreed that a few signs to watch for. Signs include seeing your child nervous or jumpy when a social media notification or text comes through, a child who becomes upset, angry, or sad while using the digital device, withdrawing from the family, the friends. Texts encourage the children are often unwilling to discuss or share intimidation about their online accounts or activities. It is definitely a red flag. Bullying and cyberbullying are toxic actions. That's really all I want to say about here. So, where are bullies found? And my definition of bullies may be different than yours. Like I say, I was in education for 40 years, but there were some teacher bullies. I have a feeling all of you somewhere were bullied by a teacher. I hate to say that, but it's true. There are coach bullies. Coaches can do things. I remember my junior year, our lunchroom served, bless our lunchroom's heart, they served the Korean meals. I guess you would call it, what is it that it's stuff that was used in the Army, but you get it and they haven't opened it. MREs. Trust. MREs, well, but this was earlier than MREs. C rations. Or there's one before that, just
J rations.
Yeah, okay. There you go. Anyway, and I ran the mile in high school, and I wasn't the best, but I was pretty good. And that day, it was a Thursday, we ate spaghetti and meatballs that I think came from Korea, but anyway. And we had to run 5 440s then. We had to run them, and we had to have it under 60 minutes, that would have been good, 60 seconds, or we had to run an initial one. And on the 4th 440, Joe, you know what I did. It came up. And as I was upheaving, the coach kicked me in the rear end. And he said, "That's what you get for partying, Rogers." I did not go out for track the next year. I wished I hadn't let a bully get the best of me. There are principal bullies. Now, my dad was a principal, and he was not a bully. He was one of the best men I've ever met. But you know what I'm talking about. I heard someone in my family talking about how the coaches would let, in algebra, would be friendly to the football players, but anyone else who wanted to learn, well, that was another story. Would you believe there's superintendent bullies? And I think you probably could name some things. School board member bullies. Now, you have to understand, my life deals in education. My dad was a school principal, for 28 years. Near retirement, he decided he would start fixing up old cars. And we loved doing it. We had 3 car dealers. Guess where? On the school board. My dad was fired because he was spending too much time with his car business. The town of Fort Sumner rebelled. They had over 2,000 petitions to have my dad rehired, but it took too long. You know, it took almost 2 years to get all of that the signatures and go before the state of New Mexico school board. Dad was offered his job back, but it was too late. After 2 years, he'd been a great principal in Gallup. Have you ever had a boss bully? I really haven't. Maybe one, but I've been so blessed to have great bosses, great principals, co-worker bullies. You know, some of us, you may be stepping up to be a supervisor or whatever, and your co-workers really try to do everything they can to give you a bad time. You know what I'm talking about. I hope you don't. Law enforcement officer bullies. I was a park ranger for 7 summers, and we had one guy that walked around with his gun on like he was Billy the Kid. He was the biggest bully. I'm glad he got transferred to I think it was the Mint department with the gold, but anyway, all kind of bullies. Clerk in the store bullies. You ever experienced that? If you haven't, you're a wonderful person. I know that my older sister, Corrine, I was with her I can't remember exactly where it was, but this lady was just terrible to her. And then Corrine asked her if she was having a bad day, how sorry she was for her mood. And, you know, try that when people are rude to you or whatever. I can see a lot of you doing that. And, I hate to put this up, but there are husband bullies. One of my wife's best friends, when Sue was working for the telephone department in Gunnison, had a husband who had been in Korea. Poor Clint had been through everything. He'd had his feet frozen. He had just something that really affected him, post-traumatic stress. But he would threaten her with a knife many, many times. And believe it or not, there are wife bullies. I'm thankful to God I have the wonderful wife I have. Do you think this is true? We have Christian brothers or sisters that are bullies? Yeah, I see people shaking their head. This can get pretty bad if you're married. You have in-law bullies. Notice never mind, I won't even go there. Gang member bullies. You know, we're pretty lucky here. We don't have too many gang in Airway Heights. But where I grew up, you had to have someone covering your back. And then there's always the football or whatever athlete bully, and or the bullier. I haven't been in the military, but I suspect that there are some military bullies in the whatever. We have a dear friend in Pitkin, Colorado. He was in Vietnam. He was a captain. His presiding officer? Anyway, the officer above him told him to go into an area of Vietnam that he knew that all of his men would be killed. The only thing the upper officer was wanting was the body bags. And he said no, and the higher up officer threatened him a court-martial, but he hit his commanding officer and said, I'm not going. Of course, he lost everything, but he stood up for his men, and some women were involved in that. You don't have to do this, but raise your hand if you've ever been bullied. I think we all have. Oh, well, you can raise it if you want to. I usually was able to keep my cool, but when somebody called me a runt, I won't go there. How do you deal with bullies? I think I've described the gamut. There are a lot of different, I don't say pull out a gun and shoot them. I thought maybe my heading was a little bad. In most schools, the student are expected to ignore the bully. The more you ignore the bully, what happens? That's right. Walk away. Sometimes you can't. Tell the bully to stop whatever they're doing. That's offensive. Some of the bullies I dealt with, they would just laugh. Go to an adult for help. Yes, that's good if you can. To be continued. We'll talk about that in just a second. Dr. Klopper, a criminologist, has concluded that the media is playing a key role. It is estimated that children see more than 8,000 murders and 100,000 violent acts on TV before they reach high school. Up to 80% of computer games are aimed at youngsters between the ages of 8 and 14. Realistically portray blood, beheadings, mutilation, and death in the most graphic color and forms associated with sound effects. And heroes who die in these games come to life again, which teaches children that violence has no consequence. Which of us would allow a stranger to come into our home and arrange the furniture? Yet daily we allow strangers on the television set or through magazines or music to reorganize our thoughts, whether we are aware of it or not. In fact, I can tell you to think of a pink elephant now, and you're going to think of a pink elephant how many times I tell you not to. Strangers have become the greatest influence on the mental and emotional development of our children through TV. And superficial, sensational, and immoral material predominates in the modern entertainment industry. It is producing an increasingly selfish, superficial, mindless, and immoral society. I keep hitting the wrong button. By the time the average child completes high school, they have spent 15,000 hours in school watching an average of 30,000 hours of television and listening to over 10,000 hours of music. And only God knows how many hours on that blankety blank cell phone. The good and the bad and the ugly. Does this have something to do with nourishing bullies? The slaughter of 13 students in Columbine, Colorado, by 2 teenage bullies attested to the fact that most of their free time was playing, guess what? Violent computer games. The reason I go back to that, this was the first case like that. I was teaching then. That was a long time ago. Have you ever heard the book And She Said Yes? Read the book if you would. It's about the young girl that the 2 boys in Columbine One of them asked her if she was a Christian, and she said yes, and they blew her head off. Bullies in the Bible. Adam and Eve's son Cain. You know the story. David and Goliath. A big bully got stopped. Saul and David. You know the story. Joseph's brothers who hated and bullied their younger brother to such an extent that they betrayed him and sold him to slavery. Elijah, I like this bully. 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah. They lost their situation with a bully. David and Absalom, his only beautiful Absalom. Almost of us, as the cruelty of bullies is a sense of betrayal, which many feel those that they thought were friends remain silent and inactive on the sidelines. Like the priest and the Levite who walked by the other side of the road while the man remained bleeding on the ground. All too many friends and fellow students choose to keep their distance and stand silent and inactive on the sidelines. The 12 apostles were viciously executed. And what about Jesus? In Jesus' plan, we know what step 5 kind of ties into. How about all adults and youth? Step 5 is when you're being attacked and your life is in danger. In his hit song, The Wonder, Johnny Cash sang, "I went out to walk with a Bible and a gun." Regardless of Cash's intents with these lyrics, it's an interesting image that I would like for you to ponder right now. The two objects, a copy of the sacred text and a lethal weapon, are seen by many as totally incompatible. It is hypocritical to be a gun-toting Bible thumper, or is it? Jesus did preach, "You have heard that I have said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you not to resist an evil person. But whoever slaps you on the right cheek can turn the other to him also." Scott, I need you up here a second.
You're not going to slap me, are you?
I am. Now, I am really aggravated with Scott. And if I'm trying to hurt him, if I slap him, 98% of the guys and gals are right-handed. I'm going to come around here with my right hand. And since he's so tall, I'll have to stand on my tiptoes. But what does the Bible say?
We should turn the other
If
cheek.
he hits you on the right cheek, what is that? An insult. Thank you, you did good. Okay. I just want you to think through what that was. I tell you guys, I'm sorry. Christians must learn to accept being treated wrongly. I'm not saying anything against that. 1 Corinthians tells us how to act. We must refrain from vengeance. Romans tells us that. The Lord also said, all who take the sword will perish by the sword. That's something else to think about. Accepted literally and without qualification, this statement would be false. Too many police officers, military, and others have died peacefully in their sleep for this to be an unconditional statement. For a better understanding, the context must be used and must be considered. Jesus was about to be arrested when he made this statement by a hostile mob, and Peter sought to protect his master by striking Malchus with a sword. You know the story. He said, if I needed protection from these threats, these mortal men, he could overwhelm his adversaries with more than 12 legions of angels. One legion is 28,000 soldiers. What would 12 legions be? 288,000. That's quite a few people. Jesus had his back covered. But again, he was doing God's plan. It was necessary. Thus, he was not issuing an absolute prohibition against self-defense, but pointing out that a spiritual kingdom cannot be advanced through carnal warfare. These three scriptures speak to that. Far from upholding pacifism, the scriptures teach that there is a time to kill. To every season, there is a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant, a time to pluck what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down, a time to build up. A time to weep, a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to gain and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. I know this is in the Old Testament, but it does speak to us. God has authorized the government to bear the sword punitively and permits his own people to function in a military capacity. Moreover, he charges men on the duty of providing their households, which includes the use of armed force to protect property and loved ones. He says it is our response, guys, to do what? Provide for our families. What does that mean? Well, it means food, a house, everything. To me, it also means protection. According to Jesus, when a strong man, fully armed, guards his own place, his goods are in peace. That could be to his family, too. Prior to Jesus' death, he had sent his disciples, first the 12. Joe talked about this. Then 70 on 2 preaching campaigns. Each time he had told them to take no provisions along, but, I keep hitting the edge, told them to take no provisions along, but to rely on the generosity of those who they would preach to. And since their efforts would be directed toward their own countrymen. After his death, Jesus prepared his apostles for something different. Read the rest of the story. He asked, "When I sent you without a money bag, knapsack, or sandals, did you lack anything?" So they said, "Nothing." Then he said to them, "But now, he who has a money bag, let him take it, and likewise a knapsack. And he who has no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one." What does that mean? Jesus knew that thieves preyed upon the travelers, so he urged his disciples to prepare accordingly. So important was this point that he taught them that it was better to be armed than clothed. Luke 10:30. "Look, Lord," they said, "we have 2 swords." Nonetheless, they were armed. Jesus said, "That's enough." The Greek word translated sword here in this text is always translated sword, and is unquestionably a weapon used for killing or self-defense. Application for us today. Everyone can't carry a sword, but yet it's my opinion that we should be armed. My older sister couldn't stand a gun, but she sure used wall spray. It's in an aerosol can. And it's not, well, it may be illegal, I don't know, to use it, but I do know it's a great deterrent. Bear spray, whatever. Many innocent family members have been harmed because of misunderstanding the scriptures like, love your enemy. Yes, we love our enemy, but not their ways. Love a rattlesnake, but be aware it can kill you. As parents, we need to teach our kids what to do, how to protect themselves in a life-threatening situation. It is my opinion if we don't, I won't go there. I'm so thankful my dad taught me to box. When I was that age, that was the only thing. There was some of the martial arts going on, but now there are so many self-defense programs. Girls need to know self-defense programs. Learn to use a weapon. There are all kinds of weapons. Cell phones can be a good thing, but you know what? Usually when you need them, you can't. Have a plan of action. We could talk all day about that probably. We have some officers in here that would have all kind of things. Learn to observe. Learn to pray. Learn to think. And learn to act. I pray you will accept this sermon with the spirit of love that is intended. I guess it was a little longer than I thought, but I hope that it sparked something in you. Our song of invitation is, if you would like to respond, we would like to invite you now to come as we stand and sing.